Welcome back, folks, to World of Warships Legends. I'm Soopa-Dave, and today we are going to be talking about pirate commanders. Now, you guys have been asking about, uh, some guides on the game with commanders recently. So, also, hopefully, this week is going to be American Battleship Commander Guide 2. So, maybe stick around for that as well. I'm still working on testing on that. But that being said, we're going to talk about these pirate commanders, guys. They're kind of unique. Some of them, like Michel Le Tir, have been out before. Some of them are new. But I do want to go through them. As a person that has spent a fair amount of money in this game, I generally have a pretty good idea about what's worth it. Now, if you are a person that is completely free to play and you think every penny spent in this game is a waste, you already have your mindset. If you're a person that buys everything in this game, chances are you're already going to have your mindset. This is more to show the commanders off. I'm not telling people to buy these. I'm not telling them not to buy them. It's not something I generally do, or ever. I don't ever do that. But anyway, let's start off with Robin the Fierce. And this, to me, is the most interesting one. I haven't heard anybody talk about these. Obviously, they just came out like 5 minutes ago. So for me, it is very early. I just did the crate video, and I don't know what other people are saying about these. But for me, Robin the Fierce is a very unique commander. We're going to talk about a few things here. I don't know that he's a must-have commander, okay? But he is a unique commander, and he has a lot of options on the table for me anyway, okay? And I'm a pretty, when it comes to destroyer, I am a very detection-based destroyer. So, like, I have a very set way I play destroyers for the most part. For the most part. And this guy has a lot of options, even for me. So first of all, let's talk about his base trait, Corsair de la Couronne. I don't know. Listen, I'm going to slaughter a lot of crap in this video. When it comes to pronunciations, you're going to have to deal with it. But chances of destroyer HE shells causing fire goes up 2%. That does not sound like a lot, but man, if you are in, for example, a British destroyer, that could be useful. While I probably won't be using this on too many things, maybe my Pan Europe, I really do like detection, but maybe my Pan European ships, destroyers, this would be. It is an interesting base trait that does have value. That's what I'll say. First row here, you can see we kind of have the classic kind of skills here. Generally, I use contact is imminent when it comes to that. Now, the second one, this is where it kind of gets interesting for some players. For me, I'm pretty straightforward on this one. I'd be using Looking Me Now. But there is a place where you could be stacking up another 2% fire chance with this. So something that may only have 8% fire chance all of a sudden has 12. On a destroyer that puts a fair amount of shells down range, that's a significant increase. We're talking about a 50% raise on something that starts out at 8%. You get it up to 12%. So that is interesting when you can stack it with the base trait. Now, really interesting thing about La Fierce is he has Perceptive and Twist and Track, and they're not on this third tier of skills. Really cool, and you can do a lot with that. Actually, I know a lot of people like Perceptive. You should always use one of them, in my opinion, unless you're like the greatest destroyer player in all kind. Knowing where the closest enemy is or knowing where the other destroyer is a huge help. Okay. Now, most of the time I use Perceptive. The French destroyers have a pretty rough turn time, so I might actually use Twist and Track, but that's, like, again, up to the build. But again, a pretty kind of unique things, because if you take twist and track, that opens up the main or your main reload if you're a gunboat. You know, that really does open that up, because you get your guns on target. If you're low on health, you can do get some more reload out. And one of the biggest things in this game for me, accuracy and reload. Them are the two most important things to me in the game. So that could be a very unique build. Also, you have his unique skill here on Nam Du Rai. Each ninth, 8th, 7th, 6th fire your destroyer starts on enemy ships is duplicated. This one's a little bit interesting to me, because I think people might like this one more than I will. The reason being is definitely if you're already raising your fire chances, right? Let's say you're doing a fire chance build, and now your first 5 fires won't duplicate, but the 6th, 7th, or ninth may duplicate itself. And I think a lot of people are going to read it like all of them are going to duplicate your 6th, 7th, and 8th. Probably like I even may have said in the beginning, but it isn't. It's just one of them that does it. And to get one fire to duplicate, I think this is going to look better than what it is on paper. Still an interesting trait, but also I'm guessing that this can trigger fight fire with fire as well. So again, if you get a salvo where you get a couple fires, all of a sudden you get a third fire. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying I think most people are going to overlook at that. I don't see myself probably using this one, but it is interesting when stacked with the fire chances ability. Also, because you have the look at me now and go all out, this also makes an interesting build. In if you were to use these two, you get your detectability down and your detectability while engine boost is active. If you get that all the way and you have it maxed out, 16%, plus whatever, if you have Bay and Swirsky, you could basically get up to somebody real close, torp the living bejesus out of them, and they ain't even know it's going to come. And that would be an interesting torp boat. So you have the ability, this guy could be a gunboat captain or even a torp type captain, especially if you consider you could have the torpedo relaunch quicker as well. So a lot of things on the table here. And then again, with this rather be torching, you could really get your fire chances really crazy. I mean, you're talking about starting at 8% and having a, let's see, 15% fire chance by the end of it if you wanted to go that route. Am I saying it's the best route? No, but I'm saying there's a lot of different options on the table with Le Fierce. I will be obviously probably going with Unstoppable. It's very hard for me to come off of this trait in a destroyer because I do use my guns, and the last thing you want to be doing is sitting there just dead in the water. Now we're going to move on to our second commander. Didn't mean to take so much time on the first one, but there was a lot with him. This is our next Russian cruiser commander. He is Andrew Lip. He is the next one we're going to talk about. Now, there is some options you could build here, but he's going to be an AP damage Russian cruiser commander. Okay, so most likely heavy cruisers is what you want to be putting this guy on. There might be some exceptions, but whatever Russian ships you're going to be using AP, this is going to be a good thing. As you can see, his base trait is Born Ready, maximum subsequent AP damage to the same target after each cruiser AP shell hit. You could get up to 15%. That is pretty big. I want to see if that seems when we use this commander, which I will be. I want to see if that ends up being as big of a thing as I think it could be. Bonus hit applies to subsequent AP shell damage, 0.5%. So very interesting in that right. Just that base trait alone in my opinion, I'm sure people are going to realize this too, but this could be a good base trait for for British light cruisers and even American heavy cruisers. There's a lot of this is a base trait that could be used in a few places. Now, for your first skills, Burn It Down XXL, Piercer, and No Fly Zone. I think on this build, this is a no-brainer. You're going to go Piercer. And like I may have mentioned, I will be probably using this on my Russian heavy cruisers down the road in the future. Also, you have Punch Through, so you have all these AP bonuses, right? And it almost gets to the point where you may not even want to shoot HE, barring certain situations, but you're going to really want to stick to AP with this build. And he does have a few other options with like crisscross and that, but again, if you're using this guy, probably I always build into uniqueness a lot of times, and his uniqueness would be an AP commander. Then you also have Intuitive, shows the direction of the closest enemy. This is something that would be very, very cool, and also because the Russians do have sonar and radar, the duration would help, and this would go pretty well with my heavy cruisers, with the Russians in general having a pretty long radar, and not a long duration, but a long distance radar. Also down here you have Fixated, acoustic chamber, which I personally wouldn't use myself, but some people do, and Hit Them Hard. This is not one I would recommend. Okay, we're gonna show why here in a second. First of all, Fixated, it's already a pretty darn good perk, right? And right here, really quick, we'll mention it does have fully packed and refill station, so it kind of solves any dilemma of anybody wanting to debate over only getting stuck with one. But again, really cool. Now back to Hit Them Hard. Observant Seaplane active, right? Let's go to Russian cruisers, guys. For some of you guys that don't know, right? Here's Riga, right? There's defensive AA, catapult fighter. Unless they're making changes to this, there's no observant seaplanes on Russians. I don't know if this was an oversight or something, but honestly, that perk that he has in Fixated already good enough anyway, where his special skill is, not something you're going to have to be overly worried about because that is good enough anyway, having Fixated. So right now, in my opinion, pretty not useful skill right now. Maybe they'll change it. I don't know. But for our next commander, Marisa La Loca. Now, there is no real cruiser line. I'm assuming the Spanish are going to be in it. I don't know, guys. I'm not a CC. I don't really know more than what anybody else does. And I don't play the PC version. So I don't know. This is a question mark commander in my book. But there is a kind of a uniqueness against to this. I could see people using this as a destroyer captain. I'll explain why. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea, but I'll explain why people might. The base trait is Rage of the Sea, so I'm assuming we're getting cruisers, maybe a Pan-American cruiser soon, or Pan-European cruisers soon, again with the Spanish. I'm not sure, guys, how that's working out. But this is a cruiser torpedo-based kind of build. I'm not particularly fond of it, but I could see some potential in the destroyer thing, or people using it that way. I won't be, because you could use torpedo speed if you wanted to for the torpedoes, and you could build this all into torpedoes. So again, these right here, your base trait is for cruisers, but everything else you can kind of use on destroyers. So torpedo range, and then torpedo launch reload time, And then you see here, even this one has destroyer flooding chance and torpedo damage. So you could make your torpedoes semi-usable in your American, or I mean your pan-European destroyers. But I'll be honest, guys, I think that's a really poor idea. Why is that a poor idea, in my opinion? Building into what a ship is kind of worse at is kind of a waste a lot of times. Helping what it's worse at, different. But building completely into what a ship is worse at, let's be honest. Pan-European destroyer torpedoes, nobody's scared of, right? Even with 5,000 of them coming at you, you're going to be okay generally. This does change that a little bit. Um, but for example, I think people are going to freak out about this flooding chance, right? Getting extra flooding chance, 60% more. Let's be honest. They don't, Pan European torpedoes, in my opinion, don't really flood that often. So, 60% of zero is still zero, is my point. Maybe other people have different opinions on that. I don't get floods very often on pan-European destroyers. That's just me, and having that plane played that line a significant amount. They don't do a lot of damage either. So building all that up is kind of like taking a secondary ship and building into the main guns. That's just my opinion. Is what it is. And then also the base trait, refill station. Oh no, it's cruiser main battery, so you couldn't even use that. You could use fully packed. That would be okay. And I mean, you could use killing distance, but you're losing the cruiser part of that if you were going to do that in destroyers. Now, for cruisers, when and if they do come out, the lines aren't out yet. So I don't know. That's kind of a question mark here, guys. Now, for the last two commanders, they have been in the game previously. That being said, this would be my first time having them, and there's some really interesting things to talk about with these if these are ones that you don't have. Le Tir has probably three big things about him. We'll talk about this here in a second. But the first one is I don't know, Borg, okay? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm not even going to try. Uh, his base trait is secondary battery shell damage. Okay, that is huge. Why is that huge? Well, a lot of people don't have Haruna, right? Everybody's got Hipper for your secondary battleships, your inspiration. That's always the first one used. Haruna is almost always the second one used if a person has Haruna, just because it adds range and more dispersion. Obviously, super helpful. But the next best option outside of Runa and Hipper probably is Le Tir with the ship secondary battery shell damage up to plus 10. Now, I wouldn't replace Haruna's with it, and I don't think most people would. It is a very interesting inspiration to have. So if you don't have Haruna and you are if you're a mostly free to play player and you just pick up the occasional guy, this might be one that's worth it. So that, outside of just being a very good commander a very good commander anyway, this base trait would be a second reason. The third reason is he has a unique. The game is Wargaming seems to be obsessed with secondary ships lately, and having good secondary commanders may help you in the future. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a CC or a guy that has inside knowledge. They putting a lot of secondary ships out would be actually useful to have it. Um, Now, for me, currently, if you look here, I use Dunkirk on my ships. Why is that? Because you can see, for example, Lafondry, I like to use the main guns as well. She's kind of a good hybrid because she is accuracy and secondary. I think I'm going to switch this now that I have a Le Tir, use him as the commander. Obviously, he isn't going to have the main gun perk, but that will free her up for using her on my main ships, which would be very interesting as well. But now there's also a fair amount of, there's at least three secondary ships. For example, Diker, La Foundry, and La Foundry. I know I just pronounced them the same. That's okay. But so they're starting to get Russian, and I think there's even one more. So you're starting to get the ships together that he could help out on quite a bit, and and could be an option for. Just my opinion. We'll go through his traits real quick because they are pretty solid. Now on a lot of battleships, secondary battleships, I always generally take the first one. I never take Brawler, but in the case of the French, because of the very good AA, having some extra AA like this would definitely help. So it's also an option. I normally like this one a lot, especially on French battleships. That being said, he has Porcupine, and right here he has a very unique thing here. Normally, this properly meticulous is in the fourth skill slot, meaning that you could go 100% into your secondaries, right? You have this one, Porcupine, and then you have properly meticulous, and you could get your master mechanic, which normally these two are in the same slot, right? So, very interesting in that fact, and that makes him uniquely good as a secondary commander, in my opinion. Also, I mean, if you still wanted the main guns, Megalomania is not a terrible option, but being that you're going to be in the heat of it with your secondaries, trying to get generally, you're going to be trying to use your secondaries. Losing that health might be significant. So properly meticulous, probably the best way I would go about it, especially French, because of the French battery. You can see there the secondary battery survival. So French secondaries have a tendency to get wrecked really quick. That would help that out a lot. In my opinion, probably the best commander in this is Le Tir. Just my opinion. Also, we have Mrs. Davis here, and she is a destroyer captain for the British, and not a bad one, right? So you could build this around. She could be kind of more of a torpedo focus. It kind of gives you a little bit. She's not super unique in any way. In fact, the way I would end up building her would be just like my other commanders, so she doesn't offer anything unique to me, but you could 100% go a little bit unique. Her base trait is Labyrinth Prowess, and torpedo launch retail out of time, and cooldown of consumables. Actually, not a terrible base trait to have. And again, these are the first row. Contact is imminent, probably what I would go with, because I don't like losing a reload on, especially the British destroyers, but on any in general. Again, I would probably use Look at Me Now here, but Sinister Strike is an option especially if you're building into them torpedoes. That's up to the player. I wouldn't be giving up my detection for slight damage buff to 1x1. That's just me. And then again, perceptive, but again, if you were going the torpedo route, you could do this. But these are skills a lot of commanders have, and the last two sets are pretty normal. Anyway, in my opinion, some interesting commanders that give you different things. I'm not saying any of them are must-have. In my opinion, the best one is Le Tir, followed by La Fierce is interesting, and I really do like Lip as a AP shooter. I would say Le Tir is probably going to be most important for most people. I do like Lip a lot, and Fierce has some really cool options with them. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and thank you for staying with the video even though I haven't been feeling the greatest today. So you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time, folks. Have a good one.